This is a story that most people don't know about. The story of the two Santas. That's right, two. You see, it's like this. There hasn't been just one Santa all this time. Instead, it's been more like a kingship or lineage kind of thing. A passing on from father to son. Father teaches son, son grows up and has a son, and passes on to him the trade of being Santa. So this is how it was. One child born to one Santa again and again for hundreds of years, until one day, not long after Christmas, in the year of the comet Sigdy Snot, that's Santa time for about, well, I'm not really sure how that translates, but let's just say not too long ago. Mrs. Claus, or Doreen, it's funny we don't know much about her, but because of Doreen, Christmas, as it was about to change, and it would never be the same. Well, anyway, it wasn't long after the big day. Things had calmed down from the rush when Doreen started feeling a little funny, sleeping a little later, crying over silly things, and knitting. She was constantly knitting. So much so that every elf at the North office was covered head to toe with clothing Doreen had knitted. Note here, just because she was knitting doesn't mean that the elves were proud to wear what she had made for them. It seems that she had a hard time judging the size, for one. And then there was the part about the extra sleeve or leg that just didn't sit well with the elves. She even began to knit for the reindeer, and that's when, to the relief of the reindeer, she thought,
I am better knitting for 2 legs than 4.
From the stories that her mother had told her, she knew that she was finally going to have a little baby. Now, I know that it is hard to imagine a little baby Santa, but that's how it was. The Claus family was so happy, especially Santa, who was looking forward to having a son.
I wonder what he'll look like,
he thought, but then he remembered.
He'll be a Santa one day, so he can't look too much different than me.
Santa knew this was the way it had been for a long time. The passing, as the elves called it.
The passing. That happened. I remember that. Yeah.
The end of his time as Santa and the beginning of his son's journey. He was excited about teaching him the trade of being Santa. What a great time it would be. Doreen had a feeling that this was a special baby. You know, a different feeling from what her mother had told her. She knew this was going to be a unique child, and from the beginning, there were unusual things. She ate more. Not so unusual except for what she ate.
Pickled jelly ham salad, a very rare combination in the North Country.
And of course, there was the knitting. This was going to be a special child in a way that only mothers can know. As the months passed, Doreen's tummy got bigger, and the elves more covered in bad knitting. Then one day, the knitting stopped. It was a cool evening at the North office. Santa was with his staff reviewing the year's events and planning for next year.
So, in terms of deliveries, we covered the entire route in a timely manner, and we were able to fulfill our commitments with no unhappy customers. It's pretty much the same every year, isn't it?
Santa went on to congratulate the elves for their hard work and talk about toys and all the stuff that good Santas had done for centuries. In the cabin, Doreen sat by the fire and thought of what might lie ahead for the Claus family with the birth of the new child. Maybe Santa would be home more. This would surely keep him close to the cabin, especially on these cold nights when the fire seemed not quite warm enough.
Candy cane production up 40%. Fairy dust production up 30%. Toy trucks.
Santa tried his best to keep his attention on the reports as the elves droned on and on.
0%.
One by one, they went through the stats of the year's run, production this and delivery that. It was almost unbearable for Santa.
No animals were harmed in the process of making this Christmas.
And he was about to call it a day when Dr. Ephraimson, the elf physician, burst into the room and yelled almost nervously,
It's a boys!
The elves turned to each other saying,
He said boys. That's not very funny. He'll be in the stables next year. Santa never jokes about children.
Santa calmly stood and raised his eggnog to toast the new arrival.
To my new son, I propose a toast.
All the elves stood and cheered, except the good doctor. You see, he hadn't made a mistake. There were 2.
You don't understand, Santa. It's two. The boys is two. You have two boys. They're twins, Santa.
A hush came over the room.
2? Is it true?
How could this be? It had never happened in the history of Santa. Not with his father, or his father's father, or his father's father's father. The elves checked the records, not even in the history book of the strange language. Nothing about it anywhere. How then could this be, and what would it mean? 'Cause everybody knows there can only be one Santa. Just like that, with the birth of an extra baby, the history of Christmas would change forever. Who would be the one to run the North office? Because twins never make good rulers, always fighting over things, and usually one is good at something the other isn't. How would it work? Who would take the reins, so to speak? And for the other son, the second-place son, what would be his fate? This certainly was the talk of the North office.
Oh, this could shut us down.
One of the elves said as he looked at Santa.
Who will listen to all the reports and, two Santas, oh my gosh, no one would ever believe that.
Santa huffed away and headed back to the cabin to see these twin Santas. The door opened slowly to the cabin as Santa entered. There in the nursery was a large bundle covered by a soft blanket.
Is it true?
He asked as he made his way past the piles of knitted things.
Yes,
A quiet voice replied.
they are too.
Oh my, this is a strange thing, Doreen.
Yes, it is. But they are both your sons.
Well, what am I to do? There can only be one to take my place.
Yes, but I'm sure with time, you will see a way.
Doreen moved closer to Santa.
They both have the gift, I can tell, and there is a reason that they are here together.
But twins? It can't be.
Santa said as he pulled the blanket back a bit to see his sons' faces.
I'm so proud. This is a wonderful moment.
Doreen moved closer to him and held his hand.